Late afternoon sunlight spilled across Rosso, the kind of Manhattan restaurant where power whispered behind linen tablecloths. When Alessia Monroe, a worn-down waitress 3 weeks into the job, pushed through the dining room, she felt the weight of every eye tracking her. But none were as sharp as the man in the back alcove, Eduardo Zatara, the crime boss people crossed streets to avoid. She barely had time to steady the wine list before the room fractured around a single sound. 3 toddlers, Eduardo's silent, unreachable triplets, shot to their feet in their custom high chair. Their faces lit up with recognition Alessia didn't understand. 3 tiny voices broke 2 years of silence. "Mom!" The restaurant froze. A fork hit the floor. And Eduardo rose slowly, his glare cutting through the hush like a blade. He stepped toward her, voice low enough to make grown men flinch. "Tell me why my daughters know your face." Alessia shook her head, breath trembling. I swear I don't know them." But the girls reached for her again, desperate, certain. And for the first time in his brutal life, Eduardo looked afraid. What happens next will rewrite everything. If this pulled you in already, like the video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales. The story only gets wilder from here. Rosso had never felt so silent. The chandeliers still glowed, but the warmth was gone, replaced by a cold tension that clung to the walls like smoke. Alessia Monroe stood frozen in the center of the empty dining room, her hands trembling at her sides as Eduardo Zatara closed the distance between them. Outside, sirens wailed in distant streets, swallowed by Manhattan's restless night. But in here the world narrowed to 1 man, 3 children, and a truth she didn't understand. "Look at me," Eduardo said, his voice steady but edged with something raw. "You're coming with me until we figure out why they spoke to you." Alessia had always been good at reading people. It was how she survived double shifts, cranky customers, and a manager who liked to remind her she was replaceable. But she had never seen a man like Eduardo, controlled, calculating, wired for danger, and beneath all that, a father barely holding himself together. "I don't know them," she whispered. "I don't know why they said that." The triplets cried from their high chair, reaching for her with tiny hands that shook as though the world was falling apart. And maybe it was. The moment the guards closed around them, she knew resistance was pointless. She allowed herself to be guided toward the back exit, every breath shallow, every sound amplified. The clatter of a dropped spoon, the whisper of doors swinging shut, Eduardo's low command as he directed his security team. Outside, the black SUV idled in the alley, headlights slicing through the mist. As soon as Alessia stepped inside, the vehicle locked automatically. Child safety or captivity, she wasn't sure which. The girls crawled into her lap without hesitation. They clung to her shirt, burying their faces into her chest as though she had been their mother their entire short lives. The warmth of their tiny bodies, the trust in their fingers, left a hollow ache in her ribs. Eduardo watched from across the car, forearms resting on his knees, gaze locked onto her face. "They've never done that for anyone," he said quietly. "Not even their nanny." The SUV hummed along the highway toward the Zatara estate. 10 acres of manicured isolation, guarded entrances, and quiet power. Since Valentina Zatara's death 18 months earlier, the house had been more mausoleum than home, a monument of glass and steel reflecting a life that was never as perfect as it appeared. Inside the estate, the girls were carried upstairs by gentle hands, though their cries echoed through the halls until the last door closed. Eduardo led Alessia into his study. Storm clouds pressed against the windows, painting his silhouette in dark, fractured light. "Sit," he instructed. "I'm not a criminal," she said. "Neither are my daughters," he answered. "But someone has lied to all of us." A sharp knock interrupted them. To her shock, the man entering wasn't a doctor or guard. It was Vincent Hale, the manager from Rosso. His presence here made no sense, until Alessia saw the glint in his eyes, that same simmering resentment he'd shown when Eduardo defended her at the restaurant. "What is he doing here?" she asked. "I came," Vincent said, "to tell him the truth before you trick him completely." Eduardo didn't turn from her. Speak carefully, Vincent scoffed. You think she's innocent. She's been acting strange since day one. Too slow, too distracted, always hiding something. Told you, Eduardo. People like her aren't trustworthy. People like her. Eduardo's eyebrow lifted. You know what I mean. Girls who pretend to be victims so men like you feel obligated to protect them. Alessia felt heat rise behind her eyes. You don't know anything about me. I know you're lying, Vincent snarled. You've been waiting for a moment to grab money or attention. And now you've dragged his children into your game. Eduardo rose so slowly it was more frightening than a shout. You're speaking as though you know my family better than I do. I'm speaking, Vincent said, stepping closer, as someone who's watched her manipulate every room she walks into. She's been trouble since the day she arrived. She's been trouble, Eduardo repeated. Or she's been convenient for you to insult. Vincent's jaw tightened. Alessia stood. You hated me because I needed the job and I worked twice as hard as anyone else. That doesn't make me a liar. Oh, please, Vincent scoffed. You think I don't recognize a gold digger? You're not the first girl who tried to climb by pretending to be helpless. The storm outside cracked with thunder. Eduardo stepped between them. You broke into my house to accuse her. I came to protect you. No, Eduardo said. You came because you can't stand that I listened to her instead of you. Vincent laughed bitterly. You're so blinded by guilt over your wife's death that you can't see what's happening right in front of you. Eduardo's expression hardened like cooling steel. Leave. Now. Vincent didn't move. If you push me out after everything I've done, you'll regret it. Eduardo glanced at his guards. Remove him. As they escorted Vincent out, he shot one last look at Alessia. Bitter, venomous, promising trouble. She exhaled shakily. He hates me. He fears you, Eduardo corrected. And fear makes weak men loud. For a moment neither spoke. Rain drummed against the windows, filling the space with uneasy rhythm. Alessia crossed her arms. What now? Now, Eduardo said. We get answers. He summoned a medical team. DNA tests were taken. Hours passed with only muffled cries from upstairs breaking the silence. When the results finally arrived, Eduardo didn't speak. He simply handed her the paper. Her eyes scanned the percentages. Her breath stalled. Biological mother, 99.9%. The room swayed. That's impossible, she whispered. The clinic said. They lied, Eduardo said. Someone lied to both of us. He led her to the east wing. His late wife's sealed suite. Dust still clung to the corners, and her perfume lingered faintly in the curtains. Alessia shivered as Eduardo opened a drawer and pulled out a leather-bound journal. This, he said, handing it to her, is the truth. The pages documented everything. Valentina's refusal to carry a pregnancy, the payments, the falsified medical reports, the secret agreements. Alessia's name was never written, but her description was unmistakable. Valentina had stolen her eggs. Alessia covered her mouth. She used me. She used all of us, Eduardo said quietly. The triplets' cries echoed faintly through the hall. Eduardo turned to her, something breaking in his voice. They never connected with her. Not once. And I didn't understand why. Alessia felt tears slip down her cheeks. Not for herself, but for 3 little girls who had been born into lies. She whispered, "Where are they?" "In the nursery," he said. When Alessia stepped inside, the scene hit her like a tidal wave. Toys scattered across the floor, blankets tossed aside. 3 toddlers sobbing in a heap of fear and confusion. The nanny tried gently to soothe them, but nothing worked. Until Alessia spoke. "Hey, sweetheart. I'm here." Instant silence. Even the storm seemed to pause. The girls rushed into her arms, burying themselves against her chest with soft, trembling breaths. Their tiny fingers curled into her shirt as though the world had finally given them back something irreplaceable. Eduardo watched, unmoving, as if witnessing a miracle he didn't dare believe. "They know you," he said softly. Alessia held the girls tighter. "Maybe they always have." For the first time, the fear in Eduardo's eyes shifted into something else. Hope, dangerous and fragile. But hope never lasts long in a house built on power. Everything unraveled 2 days later. Leak. A headline. A photograph of Alessia in the estate garden. Mafia Boss hides secret baby mama. Her stomach dropped. "You think I did this?" "No," Eduardo said. "But Marco will." His underboss, ambitious, ruthless, waiting for any sign of vulnerability, moved fast. Rumors spread. Loyalties shifted. Threats escalated. Then a brick shattered the nursery window. A note attached. "False queens bleed." Eduardo's jaw clenched. "Marco wants to force my hand. He thinks you're the threat." "I'm not," Alessia said. "I'm just trying to survive." "And I'm trying to keep you alive," he replied. Their gazes locked, something fierce rising between them. "If you stay," he said quietly, "your family." Family. A word she hadn't heard spoken with promise in years. But before she could answer, alarms blared through the estate. Sharp, urgent, too close. The lights cut out. "Stay behind me," Eduardo ordered. "Don't let go of the girls." But Alessia didn't need to be told. Instinct pushed her into motion. She grabbed the nearest chair and barricaded the nursery door. Her heart hammered as footsteps thundered up the stairs. Gunfire cracked. Shouts filled the hallway. Marco's men broke through the top floor faster than they should have. Someone on the inside had betrayed them. The door shook violently. Alessia scanned the shelves and remembered Eduardo's words. "There's a gun in every room." She found it behind a row of old books. When the door finally splintered open, she stood between the children and danger, gun raised with trembling but steady determination. "Move," Marco commanded. "No. You won't shoot me." She didn't hesitate. The bullet grazed his shoulder. Chaos erupted. And then Eduardo arrived. Furious, unstoppable, dragging Marco to the ground with a force that rattled the nursery walls. "You threatened my daughters," he growled. "You threatened their mother." By the time it was over, the house was secured. The triplets were sobbing in Alessia's arms, and Marco was dragged out the front door with wrists bound, screaming curses that no longer mattered. Eduardo knelt beside her, breath unsteady. "You saved them," he said. "You saved all of us." Alessia held the girls close. "They're what matter." Marco's punishment came swiftly. Not with bullets, not with blood, but with the one thing men like him feared most. Every family in the organization learned of his betrayal. Every ally abandoned him. Every door closed. Every protection vanished. By dawn, Marco Russo was a ghost, alive but stripped of power, respect, and territory. His own men turned him over to authorities with a detailed ledger of his crimes, every page a nail in the coffin of his reputation. No violence, no revenge killing, just total, irrevocable humiliation, the kind he'd spent years inflicting on others. Eduardo watched the news report with a quiet, satisfied nod. "He'll rot," he said. "And he'll know you're the reason he couldn't destroy this family." Alessia didn't answer. The triplets tugged at her shirt, whispering a soft, sleepy word. "Mom." And for the first time since her life had been stolen and rewritten by lies, Alessia felt something new settle into her chest. Belonging. In the days that followed, the house finally felt different. The fear that once clung to every hallway loosened, replaced by something Alessia hadn't felt in years. Quiet hope. She moved through the estate not as a stranger, but as someone reclaiming a life she never knew was hers. The triplets followed her everywhere, their laughter echoing through rooms that had long forgotten joy. Eduardo changed too. The man who once hid behind control learned to stand still long enough to listen. He checked on the girls before meetings, lingered at breakfast, and looked at Alessia as if the truth had given him permission to breathe for the first time. One evening, as twilight settled across the garden, Alessia watched the girls chase fireflies, tiny sparks drifting like new beginnings. She realized then that nothing about her path had been simple, yet every moment had carried her toward this one, choosing to stop running from the past and start living for what stood in front of her. She caught Eduardo watching her from the doorway, gratitude in his eyes rather than fear or doubt. And for the first time she didn't look away. Some truths break lives apart. Some remake them. Hers did both. As the girls tugged her forward, 3 hands wrapped around her fingers, she understood the lesson she had fought so long to learn. The truth may be painful, but it's the only thing strong enough to build a future worth protecting. And their small voices, soft, certain, were the promise that she'd chosen right. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so more people can experience moments like this with you.